Okay, guys, when we left off yesterday, there was going to be a major announcement at school in the morning that was something worse than no Halloween. And Charlie and the narrator here are thinking to themselves, what could be possibly worse than no Halloween? And he said this was even worse. Let's read and find out. The morning announcements are pretty boring, but you can usually find something else to think about. While Mr. Crabtree drones on about bus schedules and PTA notices, you can think about lunch or your science project or why Boomer Malone's retainer looks like Dracula fangs. But that day, there was big news. I'm sure you're all aware, Mr. Crabtree said, that there will be no Halloween activities in our town this year. Specifically, there will be no trick-or-treat. There will be no candy handouts. In fact, no candy at all. There was one loud groan all over the school and a babble of complaints, but Mr. Crabtree ignored it. This is owing, he went on, to widespread misconduct by, I'm sorry to say, some of our Woodrow Wilson students. He means the Herdmans, Alice Winkledon hissed, as if everybody didn't already know that. Then Alice turned around and glared at Imogene Herdman, which Alice would never do if she wasn't 4 rows and 7 seats away. No Halloween, Imogene yelled. So I guess the Herdmans didn't read the newspaper. Who says? Mr. Crabtree was still talking, so Mrs. Hazelwood said, Shh, Imogene, the mayor says. Now, shh. The mayor and who else? Imogene looked at the PA speaker. Him? Everybody else, Alice said, and it's your fault. You and Leroy and Gladys and Claude and all of your misconduct. I thought Alice was being too brave for her own good. Now she would have to stay after school and clean the blackboards or dust erasers or mop the floor or write half a book or something till the coast was clear of Herdmans. But maybe not, because Imogene didn't lunge across 4 rows and 7 seats and smack Alice flat right on the spot. She didn't even look mad. She looked really pleased with herself, as if misconduct was a hobby and the Herdmans were very good at it. Which they were. Have never encouraged these activities in the past, Mr. Crabtree was saying. However, this year, the PA system crackled and hummed and quit and came back on, which is normal for it to do. Going to have Halloween right here at Woodrow Wilson School on October 29th. And there were more crackles, as if somebody turned the microphone upside down and you could hear all the voices all over the school. What, got it wrong? Wrong? It's the wrong date? This was the first clue to what was going to happen to us. Mr. Crabtree didn't even know when Halloween was. It was hard to believe. How could he not know, Stuart Walker said, unless he's so old that they didn't even have Halloween when he was a kid. I don't think he ever was a kid, Luella McCluskey said, and you could almost believe this. Of course, Mr. Crabtree had to start out like everybody else as a baby, but after that, once he got up on his feet, he was probably just like a small principal right from the beginning. Nobody could figure out why Mr. Crabtree, of all people, would suddenly think Halloween was great and we should celebrate it. Why don't you just ask him, Mrs. Hazelwood said, and then I'll make that an assignment. Interview Mr. Crabtree for extra credit. This is how teachers' minds work. They see extra credit in everything. Danny Phyllis once said he had to eat frog legs in a restaurant, and Mrs. Hazelwood made him describe that for extra credit. Danny did a good job. Only 2 kids got sick to their stomachs, but they were kids with pet frogs, so you could understand that. Volunteers, please, to interview Mr. Crabtree? No volunteers, except, of course, Alice Wendelken, who must have I volunteer tattooed on her chest. Thank you, Alice, Mrs. Hazelwood said, moving right along, but I think Stuart Walker might like a chance to earn some extra credit. That was the last thing Stuart wanted to do. He was practically under his desk, pretending to hunt for something on the floor, but it didn't do him any good. Mrs. Hazelwood can see around corners and through walls when she's on a trail with extra credit. Do you think I can do that? I wonder if students think I can see through walls and behind my back. I wonder if all teachers have special superpowers like that. I guess Stuart tried to interview Mr. Crabtree, but he probably didn't try very hard, and after a couple of days, it didn't matter. After a couple of days, everybody knew what Mr. Crabtree suddenly saw in Halloween. Homework. In every class, on every blackboard, there was a special assignment and papers to write and things to look up. Discuss Halloween costumes, at least 3 paragraphs. Owls, bats, toads. Choose one and discuss importance to Halloween in 3 paragraphs. Witch and broomstick. Why? At least 3 paragraphs. I have to read all about pumpkins, Charlie grumbled, and then tell what all we do with them and why. Pumpkin pie, I said. You could write out the recipe for pumpkin pie. I thought that could be part of Charlie's paper, but he thought it could be the whole thing, so he was excited. You buy a can of pumpkin, Mother told him, And you buy a pie shell. Put the pumpkin in the pie shell, put it in the oven, and bake it for 45 minutes. Charlie frowned. Is that the recipe? It's my recipe, Mother said. Charlie's teacher said it was her recipe too, but it better not be Charlie's paper, or he would have to do it over. Kindergarten kids were lucky because they could just draw black cats and spooky houses the way they always did, and everyone in my class was lucky because Mrs. Hazelwood made all the assignments extra credit so you didn't have to do them. But of course, she said, I hope all of you will take this opportunity to learn a little more about Halloween customs and traditions. Right away, Alice sharpened up her pencil and copied everything off the board, so you knew where all that extra credit was going. I don't care if she has all the extra credit in the world, Luella McCluskey said. And I don't care about all the homework either, if it means we get to have Halloween after all. What are you going to be? She sighed. I guess I'll have to be a pilgrim again. Mrs. McCluskey had won a pilgrim costume in Chamber of Commerce turkey raffle, and she didn't know what else to do with it, so Luella had already been a pilgrim twice. Unless you want to trade, she said, and be the pilgrim this year. My mother won't let the good costume go to waste. No, I said. I'm going to be a belly dancer. I've got all the stuff for it. Part of a sparkly bathing suit and some curtains and some long beads. Your mother won't let you be a belly dancer, Luella said, with your whole middle showing and a jewel in your belly button. She was partly right. Mother said I absolutely could not have a jewel in my belly button. Or anything else. And you can't go barefoot. You have to wear some kind of shoes. And if it's cold, I said, I'll take that big lacy tablecloth for a shawl. She looked surprised. It won't be cold in school. But before that, I said, when we go trick-or-treating. Beth, nobody's going trick-or-treating. You know that. It's the whole point of having Halloween at school. Charlie yelped. The whole point of Halloween is trick-or-treating for candy. No. Around here, the whole point of Halloween is to beware of the Herdmans. Think about it. The dogs and cats and the Rotary Club cake. And you, Charlie, spray-painted green from head to foot. Of course, Charlie wasn't the only spray-painted kid that year, and green wasn't the only color. There were red kids and blue kids and some gold kids, including Alice. Mrs. Windleton said it was a miracle that Alice didn't die of clogged-up skin pores, but you could tell that Alice didn't really mind because she was still a little sparkly here and there 2 weeks after Halloween. By now, Mother was all warmed up to the subject. And the turkey farm, she went on, when they turned on the sprinklers and nearly drowned all the turkeys. Oh, yes, and the candy. Every year we buy all this candy and hand it out, and the Herdmans end up with all of it. I don't know what they do with all that candy year after year. They couldn't possibly eat it. I knew Charlie didn't want to talk about that, because one year Leroy Herdman made a bunch of kids, including Charlie, buy back their own candy. So, Mother said, this year will be different. This year Halloween will be entirely at Woodrow Wilson's school, controlled and safe. Don't forget there almost wasn't any Halloween at all because of the Herdmans. The mayor wasn't kidding when he called it off. Charlie was still in shock about no trick-or-treat when Mother answered my main question. I guess the Herdmans will be there, she said. Can't very well keep them out, but nobody has to worry about them. After all, how much trouble can they cause right there in school with teachers and parents everywhere? What can they do? Mother smiled at us. And if that was that, it wasn't. Which tells me that we are in for it with the Herdmans and Halloween at school. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow.